Look, I've had COVID recently. It's not always avoidable, particularly when you've got a little person. We're in a COVID world. With that comes protocols. With that comes contingencies. It's just the nature of travel in this era. And look, COVID curveballs come our way, but that doesn't mean that we don't crack on with the job. There hasn't been, on our count, a leader that's travelled into the United States in such close proximity to having had COVID. So there's a few challenges that come with that. And in these times, you roll with the COVID curveballs that we're thrown. New Zealand represents, a very small percentage of countries that are competing right now for tourists. And they are all seeking to open up and re-engage at the same time. We're doing here what we can to support our tourism operators and our tourism market to re-enter into that really highly competitive environment. We will be unashamedly promoting New Zealand in the United States as being ready to welcome visitors. We know the lead time for tourism into New Zealand out of this market can be anything between 6 and 9 months. So coming in and sharing the message to come and spend their winter in our summer is a really compelling message for us to be sharing right at this point in time. Within the Pacific, I think my comment there would just be that really what we've called for is the return. The United States has been a present force in our region for a number of years. What we've seen in recent years, though, was a particular focus perhaps to other domestic matters or into other regions, and slightly less of a presence in ours. We've asked for that return, but not just that return, but for a wider interest, particularly in the economic architecture that is growing and developing in our region, and which the United States has been less present. We have seen the United States respond to the call by New Zealand and others to engage in the economic architecture. It has been through the United States floating what they've called the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. And so I think we need to acknowledge that that is where they've sought to respond to that call. Now, that does not mean that we will back off the CPTPP, because that's where we see an existing framework that is a high quality agreement that sets a high standard that we know is beneficial to our exporters. There are a number of ongoing COVID-related travel requirements. In fact, the entry into the United States, some might say, is slightly more restrictive than even New Zealand with a 10-day rule. So it's not unusual for different markets to have COVID requirements. I think, if any, ours really sit in the middle of the pack. Pre-departure testing, we anticipate absolutely being removed by the time we come to the third phase of that opening. So that's in July. We, as the Minister has already indicated, as I've indicated, we see that coming off relatively shortly. What we need to be clear on, though, is the ongoing border and surveillance and screening plan, our ability to bring it back rapidly if required, and how it slots into our ongoing variant work. Ultimately, the fact that we're still able to make this trip and make this trip valuable for our business and trade delegation is incredibly important, and it's happening.